Alright, so this painting, it took me a couple days to do just because I kind of had an interruption during initial filming and I had to stop and take care of some things. So with a lot of my watercolors, I don't usually do a preliminary sketch at all. I just kind of go for it and wing it. So with this one, I just kind of got some color on the page. I started with completely wet paper, added a little bit of color to kind of give it more of a water feel. I live in Southeast Alaska, so I tend to do a lot of sea life and nature paintings. I do a lot of different things, but I really enjoy doing kind of whales and fish and birds and stuff. Anyway, so with this one, I kind of started with some bull kelp and a little bit other rocky kelp that kind of tends to be closer to shore when tide is in. Yeah, that's what I'm doing here, using kind of a number 4 and a number 2 brush, kind of alternating between those two, just to get some nice details in, but still get a good amount of color on the page. Working on going back and forth between some grays and some greens and some blues to create some more depth here. Create some more seaweed going on. Switching over to a slightly larger brush there, just to try something different, get some different leaf shape here. Kind of adding in a little bit more into the mid section of the painting. Yeah, I usually have 2 cups of water when I'm working. One is just to kind of clean the brush, one just to add a little more water to the pigment so I don't apply too much. I kind of go back and forth. I know a lot of artists tend to keep their watercolors on the same side as their dominant hand. I usually don't. 1, because I don't have a big enough table for that, and 2, I kind of like the risk of possibly ruining my painting at any second by dropping the wrong pigment in the wrong spot. Just because it kind of forces me to really think about what I'm doing and how I'm putting the paint down and being a little bit more creative on the spot if that were to happen. I do work on a slightly slanted surface that helps give the paint direction. So I just have a super technical piece of cardboard folded underneath this, as I showed you a little earlier. I kind of use my hairdryer a lot when I paint. I live in a pretty humid environment, so I just want to make sure that my paint is completely dry, my paper is completely dry before I kind of add more details in. Adding some more seaweed in here, kind of keeping it balanced on the left and the right hand side of the paper. Yeah. I also keep a spray bottle on hand just to help keep my paints a little bit on the wet side, and do some kind of spotty water treatment on the actual painting as well. You can kind of see that water trickling down a little bit as I go here. Now that the paper's a little bit more wet, I'm playing with more pigment in a less precise way. Yeah. I'm also using 100% cotton paper here. I find that it really helps the pigmentation stay in place better, helps with water absorption, keeps things a little bit more even, dries a little more evenly rather, and dries a little faster even. And it's not quite as heavily textured as some of the other cold press papers I've used. So while that was drying, I threw a little bit of salt on there and kind of switched back and forth between time lapse and a couple other things. So now I'm kind of adding the whales in the foreground, putting some salt in the top portion of the whale. To do that, I do that because it helps create a really great kind of barnacle-y look. It gives it that nice texture that a lot of humpback whales do have. So I'm just letting that dry here. Added a little bit more depth in that background water to kind of make it look like there's a little bit more light water balance happening. Yeah. More hair dryer. It's going at it. It's great. Adding some more details. Getting some nice shadow going on. There's the one whale that's coming right at us, and the other one that's kind of arcing up, looking like he's going to start reaching towards the surface. Yeah. a couple more splatters here and there too. Getting some of my inks out. I like to do a little bit of ink detail on some paintings and some pieces that I do. Not all the time, but every now and then I feel like it needs it just to kind of make a more finished look. So I'm just doing some nice details, the kind of lines and grooves that are on the bottom, on the stomach rather, of the whales. Adding a little bit more shading where I feel like it needs to just be a little touch darker. Kind of give that illusion of the fin edge and everything. Yeah, just doing some finishing touches. I'm just using black and a blue ink for this. So I'm just starting with black, and then I'm going to switch to blue here in a little bit. And both of these inks that I'm using are waterproof and light fast. If you're planning on displaying your artwork, it's really important that you are using good quality pigment and good quality ink, because if you don't, they're just going to fade really quickly in the sunlight, depending where you have them, in your house, apartment, room, whatever, where you're displaying it. So a lot of watercolors, when you get them, they'll have kind of a guide on what's more light fast and what isn't. You can test this out too with new paints. I might do a video of that in the future as well, but just kind of doing some last minute touches. Drew on the eye there. Gonna take a little bit of white ink. It's really just like watered down white paint, just to add a few highlights. A lot of times humpback whales have some really bright white spots on their back and kind of on the nose and on the fin and everything. So I'm just adding a few of those details in just to give it some more depth and a little bit more texture. Yeah, before I just kind of finish it off and sign it. Using a couple different brush sizes just to create some different looks. Throwing back in a little bit of color here and there where I feel like I need it, just to soften up some lines and edges, and that's pretty much it. So this painting probably took me about 3 or 4 hours of total active painting time to do, and a lot of sitting around waiting. Alright. Thanks so much. Have a great one, guys.